Hello, everyone, both watching live and watching the replay. Hi, how are y'all doing? I'm Andrew Thornton, and I am going live from Star Cottage Studio in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania. And we're coming from the bead room here. Um, it's one of the biggest projects that Allegory Gallery has attempted. I guess maybe it's kind of like tied for one of our new projects that we're working on. Hopefully, you all have been having a good week. I'm a little bit late today. It feels like that's like the story of the last couple weeks. I feel like that white rabbit running around in Alice in Wonderland going, I'm late, I'm late. It just seems like everything's like kind of not quite lining up. The way I thought, but what can you do? Just keep trying, I guess. So meeting ran late, and then as I was driving here, it started hailing. So hopefully, all of you are staying safe out there, and if you're in the path of the hurricane, you are safe and doing what you need to do so that you are not in danger. I know with our little community we have going on here, we're more than just, customer and shop. We're all friends and part of the hashtag AG Bead fam. I don't know if that's a thing yet, but maybe. So we're more than just that. So we're looking out for each other. And if you are in the path, our thoughts are with you. And hopefully you all are doing well. And if you need to escape to Pennsylvania, I don't know if the weather is any better here because it was super windy and raining super hard on my drive here. And luckily, I caught it just as it passed. If you're familiar with southwestern Pennsylvania, if you wait 5 minutes, the weather changes. And from where the cottage is and where our house is, the weather is different. Even that, there's a difference in the weather from where we are to where the house is. And you can actually watch the weather move, which is pretty wild. Um, it's called the orographical effect if you're interested. But as the elevation rises, it forces the condensation to do stuff. And yeah, there's some seventh grade loving happening. Um, anyways, let's see who's watching so far. Marianne is watching. Hey, Marianne. Hopefully you're doing well up in Canada. Hey, Norma. How are you? Hopefully you're doing well. Suzanne is watching. Hey, Suzanne. We've been thinking about you. Hopefully the hurricane doesn't hit y'all. Seems like y'all have a target painted on New Orleans. Diane's watching. Hey, Diane. If you haven't gotten a chance, stop over. Diane, could you post a link to? Do you have an Etsy site? I can't remember. If you do, post it because she's got a fridge to pay for. So buy some dog bandanas from her. Suzanne says hashtag AG Bead Fam. Is that our thing now? I don't know. We were watching this one show last night. It's called Tom Swift, and they started talking about when they were born, and I was like, that's so recent. And they had like their lingo going, and I felt so old. But anyways, I was like, what's that mean? I had to like look up some of the things they were saying. Who would have thought? I don't know. Marion says it's a gorgeous 75 here in Edmonton. You know, it was super beautiful earlier today. I got up super early this morning and did a lot of work, which kind of was wild because I posted this reel kind of on Instagram. If you take a break from posting, you kind of get you're lost in the algorithm. And I guess it's here on Facebook too that this happens. Um, but anyway, so I try to post somewhat regularly. And so I was talking about how I miss painting. I haven't really had a chance to paint very much. My studio, we've been moving everything here. And I love working here. It's great, but it's also not as convenient as if it's like right there, you know? And so, like when I'm in the house or whatever, um, I don't have a studio in the house anymore. So, when like I get bored or whatever, or if we watch a show and I'm like, oh wow, I'm restless. I used to be able to like go up into my studio and go and make stuff, and then now I have to get in the car and come here. So it gets a little bit where it's not as convenient, and that's fine. I guess it's also good in some ways because um, I think there is something to be said about having that separation between where you work and where you live. I've noticed that I've been sleeping more now that I have my work separated from our house. Used to, I would just stay up and work and work and work. And now I've been sleeping more. So I guess that's good because I don't have that distraction of work. And the thing is that I don't mind what I do. I actually really love making things. So, and I love small business. So it's not a bad thing that I was working all the time. It's just, I guess when you wear yourself out, that's not great. Anyway, so I don't know where I was going with that. So anyways, I posted this reel this morning just to kind of stay in the loop of things, and it went viral, which I thought was pretty cool. It was neat to see the number of views go up like by hundreds by the minute. It was pretty wild. It kind of tapped out at 22,000. 22,400. I think that's what it was. 22,000. At least it's 22,000. And so I was pretty like, wow, my stuff usually doesn't go that far. And lately, my reels and posts have had a very limited reach, and I don't really know what that's about. But I was getting like 100 views or 200 views. Like the last reel that I posted before this one had less than 200 views, and then this one's went viral for some reason and got over 22,000 views. So I thought that was pretty incredible. I was like, what? And it wasn't even a new thing either. I started a demo here on one of the lives doing a painting, and it was kind of the finish up, a time lapse of that. And it was talking about how I miss working or, painting. So, anyways, that was surprising. I was like, what's happening? Um, and then I tried to do it again, but it didn't work. So there's that. I got like 2 views. So that kind of, I was like, maybe finally now it's my time to shine. But I think it was just a birthday miracle where that just happened. But, really, it's a thing. It's like, it's really, on one hand, it's super amazing to think that 22,000 people have seen my work today. um, when you're alone in your studio and you're making stuff and or wherever, um, sometimes it can be very isolating, and it can feel like you're shouting into the wind sometimes. And I have a pretty wonky schedule where I'm up late a lot, so I don't have a ton of interaction with people regularly. And then when the pandemic hit, I had even less interaction with people. um, and for a while, I was going to contemporary craft classes, and that kind of eased me back into actually being, sociable with people again, which is pretty, it's different for me. But anyway, so um, It's pretty wild to think that so many people have seen my artwork. And it's really humbling, and I think it's a nice feeling. However, on the realistic side, like the practical side, I gained one follower, and out of those 22,000 people that saw, and out of the 60 plus people that liked the reel, and we didn't really see any noticeable upticks in sales in the online store. And I know that there's like a thing about consistency, so you have to keep like posting and keep trying to do the things and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, it was, so it was super nice, but at the same time, I'm not going to be all like, "Ooh, look who's the celebrity now," because I'm far from that. So it'd be nice get some of that YouTube money. That 8-year-old unboxing stuff, those $1 million to open some boxes and look cute. I was like, where was this when I was little? I was super cute. Anyways, let me get back to the folks who are watching, or if they're still watching. Hey, June. Hey, Teresa. Howdy, Julie. Dale's watching. She says, hello from Mississippi Gulf Coast, praying for Florida. Yeah, our thoughts are with Florida. My parents are still in Florida. And I talked to them on my birthday, and they were like, well, it's another hurricane. Hurricanes are coming. So hopefully everything's, everybody will be safe and sound in the path. I grew up in Florida, so we're used to hurricanes. So anyways, that's a different story. Bonnie's watching. Hey, Bonnie. I'm doing pretty well. I still have a tickle in my throat. And I don't know if that will go away anytime soon. So every once in a while, I will cough, and I apologize for that. Barbara says, my YouTube isn't working on my iPad at the moment. Oh, no. Well, hopefully it will start working. I got a notification that we were streaming to YouTube, so hopefully folks are able to watch us out in YouTube land. Maria's watching. Hello, Maria. Patty's watching. Hey, Patty. Barbara says she's watching from the Facebook then. I still watch from Facebook, and that's usually because when I'm watching like William, and usually that's because I'm trying to multitask. So if it's open, then I can kind of watch it there. But it just depends on the day. If I don't have anything else to do, then I try to watch it on the big screen on our TV. I just can't comment when I'm watching it on the TV. So, yeah. Suzanne says, no, we're okay for this hurricane. Well, that's good. Diane says, thank you. I took the Etsy down because I barely got any sales, and it was a pain to keep it up. I want to try putting stuff on the Facebook page eventually, but I haven't had time to figure it out yet. Well, good luck. I know you have a bunch of shows coming up, so hopefully that will offset the cost of your new fridge. I know how that is, where unexpected costs kind of creep up, and then you're like, holy guacamole, how am I going to take care of this? So yeah, I understand what that's like. Teresa is watching. Hey, Teresa. Barbara says, I lived in Florida for 14 years. It is the price you pay for paradise. Paradise is relative. When I was growing up, I did not particularly like living in Florida. I know that probably sounds bad, but my dad has a landscaping company, and we used to work for him in the family business, and it was hot, grueling work. And I did not particularly care for that. So I think, Ligonier is a little slice of paradise. Um, but that's me because I'm biased. I want everybody to come to Ligonier. There's somebody who recently reached out to us. Actually, they reached out to a creative business incubator, and they reached out to us and said, "Oh, you should connect." And there's this really cool retreat facility, and they usually have things like weddings and stuff. I think it's fairly new, within the past couple years, kind of new. Um, and it's 2 hours away, so it's not like super close, but it's a beautiful space from the photos. And I guess at one point there was a mansion, and then it was converted to a school, and then it was converted to a convent, and then it was converted to like a social service kind of co-op where there were all these different agencies kind of in there. And then it turned into a drug rehab facility. And so they built these dormitories, which are pretty cool. And then now it's this like rental or a retreat facility. So they were like, hey, we want to have beading retreats here. And I was like, well, we're busy. And then we started talking, of course. And, so who knows? Maybe we'll have that come sometime in the future. It won't be anytime soon. So if you are thinking that we're going to have a retreat next week, that's probably not going to happen. I kind of am tempted to do something small in Ligonier for our wedding, because last year when we got married, we had this grand idea that we were going to have this big celebration, and it was going to be like Craftapalooza 2022. And was it 2022? I guess it's, wait, what year is this? This is 2022. So it'd been Craftapalooza 2021 as like a way to celebrate. Because for us, it's all about community and creativity. And I love those traditions that like bring people together. Like there's a Southwestern Pennsylvania tradition called the cookie table. And I guess it kind of started when there were a lot of immigrants in the area, and times were tough. And so instead of baking like this huge cake and putting a lot of pressure on the one family to provide for the whole community, everybody kind of made a thing of cookies, basically a cookie potluck. And so they would all get together and bring these cookies, and it was a way to celebrate. And people were known for their particular recipes and stuff. And so that was pretty cool. Nowadays it's kind of morphed into like some people get like fancy chefs to make or pastry chefs to make their cookie tables, and they like go all out. We went to one wedding and the table must have been like 20 feet long and like stacked to the ceiling pretty much with cookies and candy. And I was like, wow, that's like a lot of cookies. So anyways, I kind of like the idea of getting together and having kind of a little mini creative retreat. And we were going to do that. But then I think it was the Delta variant. I can't remember. But there was some variant that came out relatively close to when we were supposed to get married. So we had to change everything super fast. Like we were going to get married here at the cottage, and then that didn't happen. And then we were looking into different spaces, and those fell through. And we didn't want to have enclosed spaces. And we were just going to get married at the courthouse, but then they wouldn't have marriages on the courthouse. So it was kind of loosely put together, and only a small number of people got to come physically. I know we posted it online, and so a bunch of people got to kind of celebrate with us that way. but we didn't really get to have like a reception, the kind of one that we had envisioned. So maybe now that things are settling down, you know, settling down, whatever that means, we'll have something in November. So kind of keep that earmarked. I don't know. We'll have to, play it by ear. Actually, not play it by ear, but get the calendar out and start booking stuff. But we'll see. Bonnie says, was that posted on YouTube? I don't remember. I kind of got behind on comments because I went on a tangent. So I don't know if that's in reference to. Facebook user says, we have had tornado warnings all day long. Oh no, hopefully you're staying safe. Bonnie says, oh, real on Instagram. Yeah, so on my personal Instagram, it's Andrew T. Thornton. That's THORNTON 100. That's the number 100. I post things. I try to keep things different than what I post on Facebook, so that people who see both things don't get bored to tears and they're like, oh, he's posting the same thing again. I do have an Andrew Thornton artist page on or group or something on Facebook, and people can see kind of some of the same stuff, but it doesn't always do the reels. The reels don't always get moved over. And some of those are actually pretty, like, I think they're useful. I did some tutorials on there, and I think they're pretty good. Marianne says, a 5 second of fame. It was like a couple hours. I was like delightedly scrolling down and seeing the numbers keep going up every minute. And me and William were making predictions. And I was like, maybe I'll beat the number, my highest views. And then I beat that number. And then I was like, well, wouldn't it be crazy if I got double that? And then we got almost triple my highest views from before. So that was pretty fun. But like I said earlier, it's not going to really change my life unless it happens more. Teresa says, I'm watching from YouTube. Oh, good. So it's watching. Marianne's watching from YouTube. William says, if you're watching here on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe. William's really good about reminding people about that. I'm just like, turn it off if you don't want to watch it. And he's like, don't say that. Don't say that. Say watch it. Buy stuff. We got to pay bills. We got 3 mortgages. Bunny says, can you believe McDonald's ran out of DC? I don't know what DC is. I heard on the way here that there's a McDonald's that they're doing a licorice shake, and it's like in Finland or somewhere. And I was like, I will not be partaking of that particular beverage. William says, Diane, we're around if we can help figuring anything out. He's talking about if you need help posting to groups or whatever we can do to help. We got to stick together. #AGBeadFam. Teresa says, I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and we have had hurricane season too. Yeah, there's a funny story about how we went to a bead show, and I'm not going to say which one it is, but we went to this bead show, and it was in Charleston, and they evacuated the city, but they didn't tell the vendors. So we were in this hotel, and we were like, what is happening? There's nobody here, and there's nobody walking around. It was a little bit surreal. And then everything was closed. And then my clothes, somehow it got wet. I guess there was a leak in the roof at the hotel we were staying at, and it leaked on the dresser, and all of my clothes were wet, and so we had to switch rooms, and it was a big production. But it is where I got to meet a bunch of folks that I'm still friends with. I got to hang out with Kelly Russell. She was set up. There was a little group of us, and we got to set up near each other, and that's one of the places that we became friendly. Um, and Lisa Kahn was in that little group, and Heather Wynn. She's Heather Wynn at the time. Now she's Heather Wynn Milligan. She was sharing a booth with us, and we had a lot of fun. I think Lily Pilly was there also. It was so slow that we developed a drinking game with beads. Some of us did, where we raided the little mini liquor places and got all these little bottles of different alcohol. And then we got this bag of beads, and each bead corresponded to a different shot. And just so you know, it wasn't like they were all liquor, or some of it was like juice or water, so that we weren't thunderstruck. However, we did get thunderstruck playing that game. So I don't know if I recommend that. And also, I got kind of an upset stomach because mixing too many things, but that's the youth time. Maria says, hello, William. Marianne says, I live in paradise. The only problem is the month of February, which is typically our coldest month. Yeah, you've told us how cold it gets there. And I am not eager at all to experience those temperatures. It gets cold here, and it's so weird. Like right now, it's super sunshining, but it's also raining. So there's probably a rainbow out there, but I'm not gonna flip the camera around because I've got the setup going. Bonnie says, "Oh, that would be so fun, beading retreat." Yeah, we'll see if that happens. I think one of these days coming up relatively soon, William and I will go up there. Our friends live up there, Sonia and Matt, and they've invited us before, but we've always been like, no, no, no. And so now maybe we'll go and be like, hello, are you home? Knock, knock. And then so we'll check that place out. And then so for next year, we might do a beading retreat. Also, next year, I feel like we'll have more things kind of settled and under our belt a little bit more with the new building and the new business and all the other things that we're doing. So hopefully those kind of smooth out. It's really fresh and really new. So it kind of seems a little bit overwhelming sometimes when you're like, oh, we got to do this and then run there. And I was teaching a class this past Saturday, and we talked about the virtues of having a shared calendar. And some of the people like, oh my gosh, how could you have a shared calendar with your significant other? And I was like, actually, y'all, that it makes a world of difference. Otherwise, me and William would never see each other. So, yeah. Anyways, Barbara says it was an Italian and Polish immigrants. Maria says, when is your anniversary? It is November 9th, I think. I don't know. I'm really bad with numbers. It's in the beginning of November. We tried to put it as close to the date as our first date. And we have been together for 14 years before we got married, maybe 13 years before we got married. And then it's been an extra, I don't remember. Maybe it's 14 years, 15 years. It all blends together in a nice way. So yeah, there's so many different dates, and I'm not super good with those. Barbara says the cookie thing. Yeah, I love the idea of the cookie table. It's like I like the idea of a potluck also. And one of the things I like the idea about a potluck, which is not super convenient if people are traveling, but the nice thing about a potluck is there's always at least one thing that somebody can eat. Because we've had parties where we've provided all of the food, and then people will have dietary restrictions, and it can be kind of a little bit hectic. Like one of our going away parties back in New York when we were living there, and before we were vegetarians, was pork themed. So everything had pork in it. And I made these little pork sliders with slow roasted pork and a red cabbage slaw and jalapeno peppers and mustard. And they were really good. And some other things. Even the dessert had bacon in it. And so it was a lot of fun, and the food was good. And some of the people said it was one of their best meals that they've ever had at that point. So I think we did good on that front. However, of course, one of our friends brought the person they were seeing, and that they had just started seeing, and they were vegetarian. And so I was like, I guess I could make a coleslaw sandwich with, it was really, we were scrambling around. And usually when we go to events, and this is something that I've learned, because we went to this one event where all these restaurants got together, and they would like put some of their signature dishes, and you pay one price, and you basically get to get an amuse-bouche kind of around all the different restaurants that are local. However, everything had meat in it, and I know why, because like if bacon like is one of those things that has a very high profile, a flavor profile, and it's like a big bang for the buck, and it's a big crowd pleaser, especially like around here. And so we left, and we were so hungry because we were basically eating garnishes. So that's one of those things that kind of trained us as guests. Like whenever I go somewhere, I always bring something that we can eat, so that we, at the very least, will not go hungry. Anyways, Lori says, going off on a tangent, my life for sure. Yeah, today seems like a whole lot of tangents. So if you're like, I came here to see how to embellish cords, and he's talking about eating bacon 15 years ago. William says, YouTube loves thumbs ups. Okay. Do it. If you're watching on YouTube, click the thumbs up. Marion says, done and shared. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Diane says, thanks, William. It's more of a time issue at the moment. My last show of the year is this weekend, so hopefully I can post some stuff after that. Yeah, it gets super busy this time of year with shows, and I know that a lot of people who are our customers who do like the craft shows and stuff, it's super hectic. And I don't know how some of the folks do it, because they have shows like all the time, and then in between they have online shows. And I'm like, when do you have time to make stuff? But somehow they find a way, which I think is miraculous. Maria says, thumbs up here and on Facebook. Marianne says, it is dry cold though, so unless we have a blizzard, it's not as bad as you might think. William says, it's getting cold here today, 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Even the house heat turned itself on. Yeah, it's so weird. I had to cuddle up. I've been enjoying the cooler temperatures because my cats have been cuddling me more, so that was nice. William says our November 5th, 2021 was our marriage, and November 12th, 2007 is when we started dating. So the 9th is kind of like in between, right? I think we should just like pick one and like pick an official one. Otherwise, I will get confused until the end of time. But oh well, I have memories on Facebook. They'll remind me. And as long as you know, like about or around the time that it happened, then it's like some people's birthdays. I just vaguely know that they're like at the end of March or at the beginning of August, and I'll just send a text message at the beginning of August and be like, "Happy birthday!" And they're like, "My birthday isn't for 2 weeks, but thank you." Um, I used to write cards for everybody, and I don't know how I had time for that. Like I was thinking about that the other day, and I found a stack of correspondence. And I used to be like really into writing letters and writing cards and postcards. And I found a stack of these letters, and I was like, how did I have time to go to school, work 3 jobs, have a social life, and write these cards and make artwork? Somehow in like Doctor Who land, I invented like a time machine where I like slowed time down to fit 3 lives in, lifetimes in, because at the same time, because I was like, I don't know how he did. And it's like, also, where did all the money go from when I was working? And it's like, oh yeah, I know where. Anyways, Sylvia says I was 14. I think William said it was one. Um, Oh, about when our anniversary is. Julie says, dang, came in late. No, we haven't even started yet. So, not really. We've just been talking for an hour or so. I don't know how long I've been talking. Eventually, I'll have to get to the project because my battery will run out. And I can't find my cord, my charger cord. We moved it somewhere. Teresa says, we do a cookie swap at Christmas time. I used to do that too. With a group, and that was a lot of fun. Um, but then there was this, like, it was getting kind of hard because there were so many food allergy restrictions, and people were getting super frustrated, so they just stopped. Um, so I always liked that. Marie says, "Thank you, William." Marion says, "Bacon, yummy." Marion says November 5th is the official one. See, she remembers better than I do. And Maria says, we'll remind you. Well, the thing is that if we plan to have like a little creative retreat here in Ligonier, and we kind of have to start planning last month. So we'll see if that happens. Amanda says, I have 3 pen pals, one in England, one in Wales, and one up north. Well, that's good. I used to have more pen pals. And then social media, I guess the time that I spend on social media is the time that I spent writing cards. So I guess that's a trade-off because Facebook wasn't really a thing at that time. And like MySpace was a thing, but it was mostly like, I don't know. LiveJournal was a thing, but anyways, I guess the time that we spend now, like that I spend now on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and every other which one, I spent writing letters. So maybe that's where that time went. Amanda says, I love to write cards and letters. I like it when we have the time, but hopefully we'll get back into that. We have a stack. Actually, this is kind of embarrassing. Speaking of our wedding, we have a stack of cards that we've kind of filled out halfway from thanking people for coming to the wedding and thanking people for for presents and stuff. And it's sitting on our coffee table. So maybe one of these days, hopefully soon, maybe this will be the fire that ignites us to go to the post office and get some stamps. We will send those in the mail. But it's one of those things where I kind of feel like the longer we don't do it, the more embarrassing it is. Is that like a thing? It's like, so then I feel like I have to include like something in, like a handmade card or something, and then it takes longer to make the handmade card, and so it's just like it just gets bigger and bigger. When in reality, if we just stuck a stamp on it and put it in the on the mailbox, it would be done and off of my mental headspace. But yeah, William says, that's awesome, Amanda. And Teresa says, I still like to send cards. I like it too. And we used to be roommates or shopmates with a stationery shop. So we have a whole cabinet full of cards and stationery. And I started making paper. And so I love the idea of having handmade paper cards and stuff. So we'll see. Marion says, I challenge you to complete that by October 15th. Oh, sending out the thank you cards? We'll see. I'll just send it now, just a general blanket statement. Thank you if you came to our wedding or gave us a gift. We appreciate it. Maria says, it's okay if you get it to them within a year. Is that like the time limit? I don't know. At one point I was really into etiquette because when I was growing up, we were really poor. So we didn't have a lot of money. So a lot of those etiquette things didn't really, like, we didn't really do them. And so when I moved to New York, one of my collectors took me out to this fancy dinner, and I felt like I was living this Pretty Woman moment where, the scene where she goes to the restaurant and there's so many forks and she can't figure out which fork to use. That was me, but half Filipino and a boy. And anyway, and not Rodeo Drive in New York City. And so I actually took some etiquette classes, and they taught us where to put your forks and how to signal people with the forks. And then I went to this really fancy restaurant and I did all the fork maneuvers. And then they were like, are you done? And I was like, yeah. And it's like, didn't you see my forks? They were in this particular pattern that said I was done. And then they're like, yeah, that hardly anybody does that. But anyway, so I used to be better at that, but oh well. Sandra says, you go to the post office to drop packages off, just bring the cards. I know, you would think we would do that one day, someday. I keep thinking that I'm going to put something in them, but let's do the project now. Let's turn the heat off of my albatross and do this project. All right, so yeah, I'm going to flip the camera around. So you're going to see the ceiling for a little bit. And then, yeah. And also, I don't go to the post office. Barb goes to the post office, or William goes to the post office. So that's my excuse. All right. So let me get this kind of centered. If you saw, we're going back a ways away. Back in August, the Great Bead Extravaganza had a thing called the Great Bead Trade, and some of the presenters got together and they put together these kits, and those kits were sent to one another, and the challenge was to make something from those kits. And then they had a follow-up, which was an after party. And unfortunately, I was sick for both. So after the after party, I sat down and made some things. And one of the things that I started, one of the components in the kit was some eyelash yarn. So I showed how to do Kumihimo. And it's a pretty fun thing. And this is the piece that came out. I've seen a couple people on the Facebook group share that they've been getting into Kumihimo too. I also showed last week how to make this fun little fringy tassel, which is fun if you like that fiber festival, which I do. One thing I didn't mention is that with these pieces of organza ribbon, if you cut them on the diagonal, they're less likely to fray as much. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter when you've got like this eyelash yarn fraying explosion possibilities. But today I thought I would show you, for one, this some different things. This is a piece that I made a couple years ago, and I took the sari silk ribbon, the recycled sari silk ribbon that's all hand dyed, and I made this necklace. And I don't know if you can see it very well. But I made these end caps out of silver, and I hand stamped them. And I don't remember what they say. Let me read this. Does the walker choose the path, or the path the walker? And I imagine that I made this for book club, because that sounds like a book club quote. So anyways, this is a thicker cord, and because the fibers that I used to Kumihimo were much thicker. And then to finish it off, you actually wear the fiber part in the back, and then in the front is where the clasp is. And then I have this skeleton key that I made hanging off of it. So I thought that was pretty fun. And I will show you a couple other Kumihimo braids. I had to dig around for these, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't make them, or most of them. My mother-in-law made them. She got really into Kumihimo also. And so she made a bunch of these, and then one day we'll finish them off. So this is more of that sari silk that has been recycled sari silk, but it's also braided with leather. So this is a fun way that you, depending on what you use, the fibers that you incorporate into your Kumihimo, which is Japanese knot braiding, it will radically change the finished product. So this is straight up, and this is with some leather in. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but I think it's pretty cool. This kind of has a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon vibe. I could see that. Rhaenyra wearing that, you know. This is with these ribbons, and there's a bunch of different ribbons. There's this kind of organza ribbon, and then some of that sari silk ribbon. And then I made a peyote stitch beaded tube. And this is one thing that you can do. It's a little slider. This is a nice project that if you're on the go, you can pack up a little kit and take these on the go. And your kit for traveling is like this big. Usually when I travel, I have to, and I'm doing metal smithing stuff, I have to bring hammers and a bench block and pliers and cutters and the metal and this and that and torch and this and that and that. But when I do seed bead projects, I love to take seed bead projects on the road, because whenever I'm traveling, I can just bust that out and make that really easy. And it takes up relatively not a lot of space. Like I used a little Tupperware container and put my beads in it and my beading needle and beading thread, and was good to go. And I actually, to form this, I think I've done a tutorial on this. So if you're curious on how to do this, this in the round, just check out our past videos, or maybe I'll do it again. But so this is a fun way that you can embellish these thicker cords, you can make that. I just use one of the seed bead tubes as my form to bead around, like one of these ones. So I just put that underneath and bead it around it. And then you can also use a dowel rod, and then you can kind of adjust the size to whatever cord. Just take our calipers and measure this cord, and then just find something that's of that same diameter. Um, and then you can bead around it. I've tried to bead directly onto the cord around it, and it works. However, if you do have like these braids, it can be kind of lumpy. So just keep that in mind. And if you want, you can just do a plain core and then make a bunch of these and kind of sandwich them all together. And then it looks like a really impressive, like crocheted or beaded cord. Like the whole thing is beaded, but it's actually just that kind of tube. So that cylindrical kind of peyote stitch. Julie says, I love that. Bonnie says, I love to make those too. Teresa says, what type of thread did you use? For this, for the slider, it was probably Nymo. It looks like Nymo. That it because it's waxy, and I usually only wax Nymo. So it was probably Nymo, which is nylon thread. Um, and But you could probably do this with Fireline. The only thing is if you do this with Fireline, Fireline is a little bit stiffer. So you definitely need to do this in smaller segments, because I made a piece while we were going somewhere, and it was all Fireline, and it was on a dowel rod, and it was so stiff that it wouldn't hardly bend. So you kind of have to think about the flexibility of the piece. And I think the Nymo is a good thread for that, because it will help it'll help keep the drape of the bead weaving flexible, because the Fireline is a bonded uh, thread, and so it's a little bit stiffer, which is good for structural projects and anything that needs that kind of extra engineering. But if you need it to be flexible, it's kind of tricky to get your tension just right, so it doesn't become basically a wand. It's super stiff. And if I can find that beading kit, I would show you, um, because it's straight up just a tube. Um, I was gonna look for it in theory, but I'm never gonna find it, so I'm not gonna even try. Maria says, I bead the tubes as a flat piece and then zip it up together to form the tube. That's one way to do it. And that's a really good way to do patterns, because then you can just work on a grid and you don't actually have to be as mindful about the pattern. I guess that sounds weird, but it just depends what you're more comfortable with. I learned from Dottie Westerfeld how to make these amulet bags, and we used toilet paper rolls that we slit and then rolled up, and then they kind of sprung back to keep that tension. And I learned how to do these amulet bags, and that's how I kind of got into doing that kind of cylindrical. Teresa says, thank you. Do you sell it? We do, but you will have to email the shop. So email info@allegorygallery.com and say that you're looking for Nymo, and William can hook you up. Because it's not so, we don't do a lot of seed beading in the store currently. So we have it because we have pretty much we're a full service bead store, We just don't have it listed online. So if you're interested in that, let us know. The prices that are listed on there haven't changed in like the since we've opened pretty much. So they're old school prices, so they're probably good prices. But yeah. So another um, this is one way that this has been finished off. So this is that rat tail. I think Michelle was talking about this last time about using satin rat tail. Satin, I hate that name, by the way, because I don't really like rats and I don't really like rat tails in particular. And I know that I'm supposed to be all loving and whatever, but they creep me out. And when we lived in New York City, they used to tell me these stories about how there would be so many rats in the subways, and they would all be crawling over each other, and their tails would get tangled, and then the tails would fuse together, and then they would make these giant rat balls, and they would still be alive, and they would run through the subways in these giant balls of rats with their tails entangled. um, and so, yeah, that did not fill me with a sense of comfort or peace. I know some people have them as pets, and I apologize if that is offensive to you and your pet or your love of them. But I'm not a fan. So, anyway, so that's satin rat tail with this ribbon, this multicolored ribbon, and it produces this. And because this is also has a more pronounced spiral in it, so you can see that cording have that spiral. It's like a friendship bracelet almost. Sylvia says, I appreciate when you talk about materials. When I started beading, there were not that many choices. Yeah, nowadays there's a lot more choices, and I actually don't know them all. I mean, there are people who they do more of the bead weaving, and they really know their stuff, and they like keep on top of all of the current trends and new innovations. Like there are people talking about using this interface for quilting, and then it dissolves, and they were building these structures with it, and I have not even attempted to get into that. Um, so yeah. Um, Lori says, "OMG, you're cracking me up, rat balls. That's so creepy." I'm with you, Andrew. Marion says, "My uh, province is basically rat free." Oh, good. Probably because of all the cold weather. Here is another Kumihimo braid that my mother-in-law made. This is with that recycled sari silk again. And it's a beautiful kind of blush color, sunset color with this metallic and some more of that satin rat tail. So, like I said earlier, depending on the materials you use, it will change the effect. So that's one way that you can embellish your piece is incorporating this this metallic in there, and that metallic almost gives it like a beaded look. It looks very cool, I think. It kind of reminds me of like Viking knit, like old school, or like how they would weave the metal. This kind of has that vibe for me, but it's much more bendy as opposed to being that. Now this one is done with yarn and rat tail, and so this one has a little bit of a tighter weave. And it's got these are the fibers that she used to weave them. And like I said, depending on the fibers used, it will change the look of the cord. So this has a much um, uh, tighter weave than with something that has a more rough selvage edge as like this. So it's the same 8 strands, but this is a lot more chunky than this one. So that's something to consider. This one is a mix of the recycled sari silk ribbon and yarn, but it's done in a pattern. Depending on how you do this, there are these wonderful patterns. There's a lot of books out there if you're interested in advancing how you embellish your kumihimo, and they have patterns. So the tutorial that I showed is like the basic pattern. But you can do it and build in all kinds of complicated patterns. And this one has that spiral around. So it's kind of got a Halloween vibe. And so that's pretty cool. Now, speaking of here's another example of that metallic ribbon. This is some of the finer recycled sari silk and some rat tail and some metallic cord. And because of the colors, it looks very opulent and it has that kind of beaded look. And so, yeah. Amanda says, I saw a rat the size of a cat in Tokyo. It was massive. I saw a very large rat in New York City, and it started charging me. And me and Cynthia were having some food in one of the parks. I think it was in like a battery park or something. And we were just sitting there on the benches enjoying our food. And all of a sudden, this rat came out and started charging me. And I screamed and squealed just like a little girl and jumped up in the air, Michael Jordan style, and basically flew away from that bench. And Cynthia was basically rolling on the floor, laughing so hard. And then the rat kind of chased me. So that was less than desirable. Not one of my favorite things. No. And this is another one with that metallic cord, but more rat tail and a little bit of that metallic. So it has that beautiful kind of studded look. I really like that. It has a very, I like that. It looks like beads, but it's not. Now, speaking of the spiral, here is another one of these spirals, depending on how you do the stitch. It almost looks like a DNA, like a double helix. And this is with the recycled sari silk and yarn. I think the yarn is good because it gives it that kind of extra structure. And it's tighter, it's a tighter weave, so it makes it more pronounced. Like you can see that the volume gets compressed with that tighter fiber. Now, if you want, you can also kumihimo flat. So if you have there's a rectangle and you can make your cords, and this is done with that recycled sari silk and rat tail, and this is a flat braid. Again, these House of the Dragon colors, that red and gold, that kind of antique burnished old world gold with that kind of claret wine red. And so you can have it and be flat. So that's really great if you're doing bracelets. You can have that, and it's super nice. For a while there were these beads called Regalese bead or Regalese leather, and so there were. It's basically really thick rectangular leather that was cut into strips, kind of like this, but not braided. And there was a whole thing of beads that came out that fit only that leather. And there are end caps only for that leather. So if you happen to have that leather, or those components, like those beads that fit that leather and those end caps that fit that leather, you can use this cording, this rectangular flat kumihimo, and use those beads to embellish this even further. So that's an option that you have as far as, you know, different supplies. Just because one thing is designed for something doesn't mean that you can't use it for the project that you're working on. I think part of the innovation that happens in the craft community happens when you dabble with different crafts. So if you do a little of this and you do a little bit of that, then you have a lot more tools in your tool chest as far as what the possibilities are. There's a wonderful essay in the beginning of Charles Luton Brain's fold forming book where he talks about how it's good. Tradition is good to preserve different things and the way things are done, but teaching process and understanding process is very different in the sense that it teaches you what you need to know, but it also teaches you how to not be limited by such rigid traditions and strict, this is how you do this and this is how you do that. Teaching the process of how things come together inspires you to innovate of how you can do things better or to do them in the way that works for you. And so I think that that's a wonderful kind of lesson for crafts because there's so many people who do, they're omni crafters, so they do a lot of different things, and those different things can inform those different ways of doing things. So like I mentioned earlier, there is somebody who is using that dissolvable quilting mesh in their beadwork, and they started off as quilters, so that's how they got familiarized with that product and then started using that in their jewelry making when that wasn't really a thing before that. Um, and there's other things like one of the stories that I just love is that when Softlick started off, they started off in the fishing industry and they were selling this non-breakable fishing line, and the thing is it didn't break. So with fishing line, they wanted that thread or uh, that fishing line to break essentially, and so you buy more. And for them, it didn't break. So they then applied that same technology that was originally designed for a completely different industry and put that into the beading world and definitely revolutionized how jewelry is put together. Um, so, anyways, that I think it's a good thing when people experiment and explore. Cynthia says she loves that memory. Teresa says yes, rats get big in NYC. Yeah, they're fearless too. They'd be like, did you all remember Pizza Rat? There's a meme of Pizza Rat who they got a slice of pizza and then it like pulled it down into the subway. Amanda says rats can swim for 3 days straight. That's nightmare inducing. Thanks, Amanda. I was just hoping that, whatever, but Cynthia says, how small can you go? I'm thinking about cord for bronze pieces. You can use whatever size you want, which is pretty wild. It does get a little bit harder. You might have to make a smaller wheel if you want to have like a really small cord. But I've done it with with smaller fibers and made very streamlined cords. It almost has the feeling of silver silk, but it's made in a very different way. Money said that makes me hungry for licorice. I never get hungry for licorice. So this is a looser one, and I believe this is a 4-cord one, and it's done very differently, and so it's much looser and less tight. So depending on how tight you do it, it will change the effect of it. So if you wanted something more streamlined, you would not want to do this loosey goosey style. But it's cool. It's like if you make big pieces, like if you make those big collar pieces, like those breastplates out of like seed beads or metal or whatever, um, you might have to have a necklace that can hold up to the size of the piece. So this is a good option where you're kind of loosely doing it, and it has a very kind of a much bulkier style. Now this is definitely very Halloween vibe, where it's got the satin rat tail and this metallic threaded ribbon, and it has that kind of cool spiraling pattern. But if you look closely, it almost looks like it's studded with little beads, which I think is pretty cool. Now we've looked at this, and this is a tighter one, a much tighter one. It's rat tail, and only rat tail. It's only satin rat tail, and it's done in that spiral. So you can get really tight designs in it. And I don't know if I do have it. Now I kind of jumped. I jumped around. Oh, this is another thing. If you use a rubber band to hold your pieces together, if you forget your project for a while, sometimes those rubber bands can get crusty and they're less than desirable. So the wire is a wonderful thing because it doesn't basically disintegrate. So keep that in mind. I'm going to throw this in the trash while it's still in my hand. Um, but this is different threads and yarns. And these actually might have come from one of these fiber cards that we have. Teresa says, I've used embroidery thread. And then Laurie says, I love sari silk. Gives such a boho look. Did you say you will have sari silk in your shop? Sorry if I missed. We do have it in the store. Email the store and William can hook you up. We might have it online. If William is still watching, if he can drop a link if we have it. I don't know if it's in the shop online or not, but we do sell it. Because I bought out the woman who was hand dyeing them for us. She was having some health problems, so she scaled back the production of hand dyeing the sari silk and making the ribbons for us. So she's kind of retiring from doing it. So I bought up everything that she had available and cleared her out. Cynthia says, Bonnie, he never gets hungry for licorice because when he was a kid, he picked out a 6-foot length of licorice rope and used it like a whip and a dancing prop, all while eating it. About 20 minutes later, he got so nauseous in the back of the Suburban and had to get out and throw up alongside the road. It was like a horror movie with all that black licorice coming up. Yeah, it came out of my eyes and nose. If you've ever driven through, maybe it's not like this nowadays, but back in the day, driving through the Ozark Mountains it was very hilly. So you'd be like, we used to go wee in the back of the car because in the Suburban, you'd actually catch a little air. And this is before like seat belts were like a thing. I mean, people wear seat belts, but like the kids didn't necessarily wear seat belts all the time, and we didn't wear seatbelts. And so I was in the back of the Suburban, and I had just eaten 6 feet of licorice and was catching air. And so basically, it was like being on a carnival ride. And ever since that, I've never liked it. I've never really liked licorice. It's not, it's not for me. And then the other thing is that I went on this blind date once, and I worked at a bar at the time, and they had, before I went out on my blind date, we all did shots, and they had these flaming sambuca shots, which is basically licorice flavored alcohol but on fire. And so I got nervous, and I thought that I would catch myself on fire. I don't know what I was thinking. And so I kind of hesitated, and then I blew it out, and then I thought it was being slick, and I blew it out before I took the shot. And what I didn't realize is that the rim of the shot glass had superheated and heated up while I had hesitated, and it had left burn blisters on my upper lip. And so I went out on this blind date, and things were not clicking. And I was like, why? Why, like, like, what is up? It's like, where the no chemistry, where that chemistry, like, not even a little bit. And then I went to the bathroom, and I saw my upper lip sprouting a plethora of burns. And I was like, oh, that's why, because that looks like something else. And I was like, oh, sorry. This is not what you think it is. And needless to say, we did not go on a second date. And so, yeah, another reason why I'm not in favor of licorice. Fun times, fun times. Suzanne says it is online. William put a link, and he put the link for the sari silk. And Bonnie says, oh my, Cynthia, I understand everything much better. And there's another link for the sari silk. And Bonnie says, OMG, Andrew, that's quite a story. I have lots of stories apparently today. So here's another kind of loosey-goosey style braid. This is done with the sari silk and the rat tail. I don't think we have the rat tail online. But I love that you can get such a wide variety. And you can see that there is a spiral in this, but it's not as pronounced because the cord is thicker, so you can't actually see it as much. And I think that this is done with fewer strands. I could count them if I was so dedicated to that. Like, there are 2 of this, and then there are more of the rat tail. So it's got a different vibe for sure. Speaking of how low can you go, here is this style. This is this ribbon, and I think this ribbon came in a Kumihimo kit, if I'm not mistaken. But you could get really much smaller diameter a cord braid if you use a smaller cord. I think that's pretty tight. I mean, that's like, what, 5 or 6 millimeters diameter. It's pretty thin. You could even go thinner. And also, this is not stretched out, so it'll get even thinner than this because it's not stretched out. That's another thing. If you stretch it out like this, it will make it much thinner. Cynthia says, I love it. Diane says, but you could say that if it weren't for licorice, you might have not ended up with William. I'm pretty sure I would have. But that's another story. But anyways. And then if you use the square, And this is done with ribbon. You can make the Kumihimo kind of like this, where it is, and it's kind of a square. It's pretty wild. It kind of reminds me of like a memory foam or something, or like an egg carton. But it's a square with this ribbon, and I think there's only 4 of these strands, and it's done like this. So you can get that kind of, it's like that blockier, more square style. And here's that done in different. You have one side and it's that gold, and then you have the other and it's that this uh, um, ombre effect ribbon, and you can get it so that it's like this. Um, and I think that's really cool if you're doing something geometric. You can do it where you build that into your design of your piece. It also makes it really cool as a base to build off of. If you're going to do stuff on top of it, you can have it and it will conform to your wrists a little bit better because it has that flat edge. Now, you can do patterns in there, and I definitely am 100% not an expert at how to do this. William's mom did this, and she made this cord, and it has little hearts in it. So you can do you can do all kinds of really fun patterns in there where you build imagery into your cord. So if you like that heart look, there you go. That'd be good for like a Valentine's Day bracelet. I mean, it looks more like a heart when you hold it like this. When it's like this, it looks less. It looks more like a spaceship. Heart, spaceship. Heart, spaceship. And what's to say they can't be the same thing? Cynthia says, imagine it in dark rainbow with a bronze piece. Yeah, that would be beautiful. There are some really wonderful, almost fiber optic threads. And I think that that would be so cool. And the cool thing about these is like if you're working with resin or epoxy clay or different things like that, you can embed this in that. So your piece can kind of fuse to your cord and you can kind of build that into your piece. So if you're interested in doing that, there's a lot of really cool innovations that you can do. We really haven't even talked about beads yet. And here's an example of using beads in your Kumihimo pattern. So basically you string up the beads before you start, and then you work that into the pattern. Again, I don't tend to do this. I know there are some people who are really into incorporating beads into their patterns in the Kumihimo, and it does become a part of the structure. So I think that's pretty cool how that becomes a part of the structure, if you can see that. So it becomes studded. Now I'm going to show you a different technique of getting a similar effect, but different. So this has already gone on it's been a long day for some of y'all, and I'm just going to keep going. I feel in my throat that it's I've been talking a long time and I didn't bring a drink. So you just have to bear with me. So this is some Nymo. Marion says, okay, I need a set of Kumihimo tools. And then Amanda says, now I want to do Kumihimo. Yeah, it's pretty addictive. I think it's really fun. And I go through phases where especially like in the winter when I'm kind of like you can't there's you do your outside chores. I guess there's outside chores when it's winter, but you know what I mean, like when you're more homebound and like watching TV and stuff, Like I will get a fiber card like this and make a bunch of cords and then glue those into the ends and then have those to hang pendants off of. And we used to sell them more like fort days and stuff. Um, Anyways, I'm going to show you this technique. I'm not going to be able to finish it because it's a fairly slow going project. But it's one of those projects that you don't really have to focus on what you're doing. I mean, you have to focus a little bit, obviously, but it's not something where you have to count and you don't have to do a meticulous kind of count or whatever, or keeping track of the pattern. So what you do is you string up or you cut off one wingspan worth of this NYMO. In this case, you want to have a thread that is flexible like this and has a nice drape. It is most like a regular sewing thread than say Fireline. I guess if you had if you needed that structure for some reason, then you should use it. But so thread that out your needle with that, and you're going to pick a color that is somewhat similar to your piece. And the reason why is you kind of want this thread to disappear. You don't want it to show up. Or maybe you do, but normally you kind of want this to be invisible. All right. So at the end, normally you leave your tail kind of, you don't tie a knot in your tail. And the reason why is because then you weave that back in. But with this technique, you're going to want to tie a knot. And then you're going to want to tie another knot. And this is so that it's not, so that it's so it won't pull through. You want that knot to be somewhat substantial. Don't worry, you won't really see it, but it's important that you have this. Now, you don't necessarily have to use a Kumihimo braid to do this technique. I've braided, we have that column silk. I've braided that silk, that hand-dyed column stitch silk, and used that, and it turned out pretty good. I took that on a trip to Hawaii, and it was great because it was lightweight, it was portable, and I filled up all of those hours beading, on the plane. Anyways, so you want to make sure that knot is pretty good at the end. And then you're going to take your needle, and you can use a shorty needle for this. I'm using a longer needle because I think it makes picking up the beads easier. And you're just going to pull this through, and that knot is going to catch. All right. So you basically just stitch this on. And I've got this little bowl, this ramekin, and here's some of the beads from the kit that we had, the Surrealist Garden kit, which matches the colors that we had from the bead trade. And so depending on the style that you want, you just pick up a bead and then find a spot and then just take that needle and go through. And you're just going to repeat that over and over and over. And I was looking for my sample and I can't find it, of course, because that would be convenient and nice. But it's a pretty cool, pretty easy technique. Sometimes your thread will come off. You just have to make sure that you pull it and make sure it's secure. And what that will do is it will basically stud your cord. And this, the thing that I love about this is that you don't even have to look at it really. You can just keep going and going and going. And you can build patterns in if you want, depending on how thickly you do your stitches. Depending on how densely you beat it, it will have a different look. You can do this and beat it in such a way that you can't even see the cord underneath. You can beat it really thickly, and you won't even see the cord underneath. I kind of like to see the cord underneath. I like it with these kind of organic, kind of fluffy cords, because then it kind of reinforces the cord for one, and number two, it kind of taps down some of that wildness and makes it a little less like tickly on the back of your neck. So you just keep doing that and stitching. Now, if you want to be festive with it, Cynthia says updated wandering needle necklace. Yeah, I think actually Cynthia's the one who taught me this technique. So sorry, Cynthia, if I'm giving away your secrets. But it is, yeah, she called it the wandering needle necklace. And you basically just stitch this on, and with this, it's done with a braid. Sometimes things will get tangled up if you have them kind of like hanging out. Like this, I got this tangled up on this cord, which I can just cut that off because I don't need it. But if you, let me pull this out real fast. And then you just kind of stitch it on, and then it's easy peasy. And hopefully it doesn't get tangled up when you're doing a live demo. I have a knot there. You can hear it. It's snapped. Before that gets too out of control, find the knot and try to take it apart. Because the more you work, the more you pull that knot through, the tighter that knot will get. And in theory, I'm not losing that much length. I would just cut that off and keep going. Whenever you get to a stopping point, you just make a knot and tie it in there, and that's it. Cynthia said, I use silk cord in mine. And she says, you can also use fine wire and wrap. And also, if you don't want to do one at a time, you can also do several at a time. So what you can do is just pinch an inch, is what I call it, and just get a little pinch of beads, and then just string up a bunch of beads, and however many you want, because it will change how this looks. And then once you have this on there, and I keep pulling this thing off the thing. I almost pulled it off again. You pull this down, and then you can stitch this in like so. So it's a nice way to, if you want it to go quicker, it doesn't have as much of that studded look as if you do one at a time, but it is much quicker. So you can have that and kind of build that kind of spiraling look in there. And if you were really super inclined to do it, if you did a spiral in your Kumihimo, like, let me find that spirally one. If you had one that, I had that one, I just showed it to y'all. So if you were inclined, if you had this spirally one, you could actually take the beads and line them up, and it would look like a Cellini spiral like that, except it would be part fiber and part beads, and you could stitch them down like this. So you could use this channel to put beads in and have that worked around in a spiral. And people will be like, how did you get that to work? The cool thing about this technique is that there's multiple stitches. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of stitches. And the more stitches there are, the stronger your piece gets. So it's pretty cool how you can kind of embellish that like that. So there's a couple different ways of doing that. You can also, if you want, if you have those sequins, I have a bowl of sequins somewhere around here. I've got these sequins, and what you would do is find that sequin. If you don't have a rainbow mix like this, find the sequin that you want. Make sure your side is facing up, the one that you want showing. Go from the bottom, put that up through the sequin, string a bead on. Go down to where you, down to the cord, like so. And then pass that back through. And that bead that you strung on will be a stop bead. And so you can get a kind of a effect like this. I don't know if you can see that or not. So it has a different effect. So if you wanted to have it like that, you could fill this whole thing with sequins and have a very kind of almost like a mermaid scale effect or a dragon scale. So there's a lot of different options that you can do on embellishing these cords once you have them. And I wish I could find the samples that I made because they're pretty cool, I think. And I like the way that it looks studded. It's like encrusted with jewels. Cynthia says, I like to use some wax to help it slide through. Yeah, that it does help, especially with this Nymo. Usually I have a little bit of wax or a thread heaven. Beeswax is really great, and it helps condition your thread. One thing though that I will recommend is if you do add wax, don't add too much. And when you add the wax on, hold it between your thumb and forefinger and really work it in there. And the reason why is that, especially if you're working with a light colored cord, and it can kind of, if you have too much wax, it can get gummy, and that residue can stain your light fibers and it can look really dirty. So, so just be mindful of that, and just really work it into your thread. And if you kind of use your nail, you can actually scrape off some of the excess. And that's a good way. I mean, your nails will be kind of gross, but it will be a good way not to get those kind of wax boogers. On something like this where where it's more wild, you won't really see it. But with a tighter braid with a lighter fabric, you will see it. So just be mindful of that. Julie says, really like that bead mix. Thanks. I think that this mix is sold out, unfortunately. And I don't think we're going to be making any more. The new kit will debut pretty soon. I think we're going to debut the new design challenge kit maybe on our takeover day, which is coming up fairly soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Today was, I can't remember whose day it was in the GBE. But yeah. Julie asks, is the cord made of eyelash yarn? Yeah. So if you missed how I made this, the cord, check it out. It's 2 videos ago that I did of the tutorials. So I'm going to say maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I showed how to do this using the eyelash yarn. And then last week, I showed how to do the end caps. And then this week, I'm showing how you can embellish this cord with beads. So there's a lot of different techniques that you can use to add a little bit of flair to your cords. So if you think that this is like plain and you want to dress it up some more, even more, you can definitely do that. I did one that was all in black. It was all different kinds of cords braided together with Kumihimo. And then I did black vintage and antique black beads studded all over that, and it looked amazing, if I don't say so myself. I sold that piece for quite a bit of money, and I even included some vintage or antique jet black buttons. They're tiny little Victorian buttons that and it was basically studded and was pretty cool. I wish I had pictures of it. I probably do somewhere, but at some point I lost the images on my computer. And who knows where, I've made a lot of stuff over the years. So who knows where it is. But yeah, if somebody is watching and they bought that piece, I can't remember who it was, but if you want to take a picture of it and share it to the design challenge group, I would love to see it again. Also, I'd love to see how well it kept up, because I was really in love with that piece. It looked very luxurious. It had a little bit of metallic sheen on some of those antique check glass seed beads, and yeah, it looked, I think, pretty nice. Suzanne said bead place. Oh, that's right. Everybody's saying the bead place. Julie said, thank you. All right, y'all. I've been talking for almost 2 hours. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to flip around real quick. Hey, everybody. So in this one, we talked a lot. I told lots and lots of stories. So yeah, if you're not into that, then this probably wasn't the one for you. But if you do like my stories and anecdotes and wanderings down memory lane, then maybe, maybe you like that style. We went through lots and lots of different ways of embellishing Kumihimo cord. Between the fibers you used to putting patterns in using a square disc instead of a round disc. Excuse me. And then we talked about embellishing your braids further with beading. If I can find the sample, I will take a picture of it because it's really cool when it's finished. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. If you do anything where you're embellishing your work, your cords that you make, please post them in the design challenge group. We would love to see what you make. It's not just for our challenges, but it's a place where people can share what they've made with the products that they've purchased at Allegory Gallery. Now, if you're looking for beading materials, check it out. Check us out online at allegorygallery.com. We have lots and lots of things. I think V added a bunch of stuff today. So there's a bunch of stuff, new stuff online. So if you want to see the new stuff, go on over, check it out, and look for latest products. And I also want to remind people, because I looked over the numbers and it looks like not a ton of people got the kits. We made some kits for our TGBE Fall Fest. So we came out with 5 different kits. And if you want to make along with us for at least part of the day or part of our hour, we're going to be using those kits in that during our presentation. So grab those kits before they sell out. We only made 10 of each. And yeah, I think they will, at least some of them will sell out. We also made extra of the little bird pendant. And so if you want one of those to make earrings or whatever, or two to make earrings, those are also available online at allegorygallery.com. Like always, anything you purchase from us helps support us and keep this creative castle afloat. It's getting harder and harder to keep the creative castle afloat. So any support that you can send our way is much appreciated. Lori said, "Oh, that's really cute." Teresa said, "This was great, Andrew." And Bonnie says, "Thanks, Andrew. Good tips." Marianne says, "Merci beaucoup for the great demo." And Talk. Maria says, "Thank you, Andrew. Have a nice evening." William dropped a link for our kits that you can get for our Fall Fest kits. And the other thing I wanted to say was we're going to have more kits coming out soon. I tried to make kind of like a celebratory kit for my birthday. Well, actually, it started off as the celebratory kit for our anniversary for the store. We recently celebrated our 10th or 11th birthday. 10th? No, that sounds wrong. 11th or 12th. I always get confused with that. Like within It's a Human Child, like a year passes, then they're 1 year old. And then, but with like a store, like when do you start? I don't know. So you're on year 2? I don't know. Anyways, Teresa says 11th. It feels longer because I've been doing it longer. June says, "Thank you for the entertaining stories. Also, much thanks for the tips on Kumihimo." Thanks. So yeah, so we started off making those kits for the 11th anniversary, and then we were going to make them for my birthday. And now this is just going to be for our celebration of life, I guess. I don't know. And we'll have those coming out soon. We are now on year 12. Janet says, "I bought kits and extra pendants. Can't wait to use them." Yeah, we're excited for Pete to see what people use as well. I've seen a couple people post their projects where they've made Kumihimo things after the demo. I also saw somebody do a tassel based off of the tutorial that I did, the kind of like bonus tutorial that I did. And I'm getting really, really close to the camera, and y'all are going to be able to count my pores, but it's in that pile somewhere. You already seen it like twice. So anyways, I'll actually finish it up. I will try to finish it up tonight. I'm going to put on the heat here because it's actually getting a little chilly. Yeah, so keep an eye peeled for the designs. I don't think we posted anything in the that we made recently in the design challenge group, so there's that as well. William says, "Are you in our design challenge group? Join us here." Yeah, it's a really lovely group. It's really wonderful. I enjoy it. I always look at the projects. I don't always get to comment, but even if I don't get to comment, there's always somebody who has an encouraging word for the people who post stuff in there. So it's a lovely group, and I can't say enough good things about it. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, William turned the heat on. See, that's the cool thing about technology. He can do that from all the way over, and he's at the house, and he can turn on the heat from the house here, which is kind of cool, but kind of creepy. All right, we talked about the Kumihimo. I don't know. If I'm forgetting it, I'm forgetting it. So I know I'm forgetting something, but I can't remember what. So I guess it doesn't matter. I probably should go home and eat something. But anyways, William says, heat on. Thank you, William. And then I'm like, I got to go home and eat. So, oh, well, I can't remember. Anyways, we'll see you back tomorrow around 5 o'clock. Hopefully we'll see you there. And yeah, see you there. Bye-bye.